Hey there. Hello, welcome. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation. This is a video that I do every morning at 5:30 a.m. to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone, which you can read for free at goingalone.org. I also use this time to think about yesterday and last night, and basically the last 24 hours since the same time yesterday, and how I did with the various challenges and opportunities that I met. I try to remember my values, namely my creed, my objectives, and the principles that help me to achieve those objectives in life, and I prepare for the coming day. So let's jump into it. First, welcome to new subscribers. It's good to have you on the channel. Quick note that this is a daily journal video that I do, so don't be surprised if I go personal and deep. Also, this is not a Japan video, so I won't be talking about Japan at large, other than simply maybe in the incidental way that Japan may relate to the experiences that I had in the last 24 hours, or in the broader context of life. And finally, thank you for your support watching my videos, being members on YouTube, and supporters on Patreon mean a lot to me. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to do three things now. I'll go over the last 24 hours, looking for interesting moments through the day where I was particularly challenged by life, and where I did either very well or did poorly. I'm not too interested in the stuff where I'm doing average these days. That's where my life is already tuned, and I don't need to apply too much more attention. I'm looking for the parts where there's a strange noise coming from under the hood of my life, and I need to get a flashlight out and dig around and find out what's going on. So I have notes, and my notes from yesterday consist of 2 entries in the last 24 hours section. One is more confusion, and then in parentheses it says peace-like. What that simply means is that yesterday was a busy day. Our daughter Emily is here to visit, and her boyfriend Tatsuya arrived mid-morning and spent the day with us. And the entire day was spent doing very active things, eating out breakfast, lunch, and dinner, going to an antique store on the other side of town, going to convenience stores. We'd spent a lot of time eating and drinking yesterday, which is fine on a weekend, especially when you have family coming to visit. But I was the person who was orchestrating the driving of all of that and facilitating a lot of the things that were going on. And if you've watched these videos, even incidentally, if you've only watched a few of them in recent months, you'll know that I'm experiencing a grave sense of confusion and disorientation in life that came about after I moved back to Japan, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. I've moved to Japan twice in the past from my life in America, wholesale change, and both times I made the transition, I wouldn't say easily or smoothly, but not like this. In the past, the challenges were always related to, having my mind fighting against the paradigm here. I went through that stage that so many expats coming to Japan experience, if they're coming from the West in particular, where we kind of, despite the fact that we love Japan and it's an interesting place to live and the Japanese people are wonderful, we kind of rebel a little bit about the ways and means by which things are done here that seem like they could suffer some improvement based on our own experience. It's a very sophomoric experience that many foreigners have, Western foreigners in particular, have when we come here. A love-hate experience that develops, and I've gone through that. I went through that just like so many others. Like I certainly wasn't immune to that. I'm not experiencing that very much anymore. I think after 3 times, this is my 3rd time back, and a lot of time with Japan, I don't expect Japan to be anything more than it simply is. But I certainly am struggling with the day-to-day. This has nothing to do with cultural adjustment. This has everything to do with the fact of diminishing capacity and capability. I know it sounds like I go on about this every single day, which is my prerogative. This is my journal. This is my good life meditation. I can take it anywhere and as often as I want. It's liberating to remember that for me, to keep in mind that I can talk about this every day if I want to. And lately I do. But I really am. And it was interesting. I had an interesting conversation with Tatsuya yesterday. His English is really good. So, and he's eager to improve his English. So he engages me in English, and we pretty much just speak in English with rare exceptions. You know, it's not that I don't try my Japanese, but with him, he wants to speak English. So, and we do, and it's easier. Anyway, our conversation took an interesting turn when we were talking about we were talking about role models, and he brought it up. He brings up interesting conversations. He's an interesting young man. You know, if he winds up being my son-in-law, I'll be quite pleased to have someone at the Thanksgiving table, so to speak, with whom I can carry on the type of conversation that I enjoy. Anyway, he was sharing with me about his role models. Like I said, he's a very ambitious young man. He's an entrepreneur. And that conversation about role models somehow led to conversation, guided by me, evidently, obviously. Guided me, the conversation, when it had ran its course about role models, and I shared my role models, namely Henry David Thoreau. The conversation turned to the ever-present in my life, omnipresent topic of readiness for death. And Tatsuya responded the way 9 out of 10 people do when I talk about readiness for death. They rebel against it. They throw up their hands. You know, it's the typical thing. No, you're going to live a long time, and you're young and youthful. Actually, initially it wasn't death. I was talking about this seeming debility that is coming about me. As I made in my note, my confusion, as I sometimes call it, gross incompetence in living in Japan, and my quite honest diminishing capacities of both body and mind, rapidly falling down fast. And there's almost nobody that I can share that fact with who doesn't fight me on it. Emily doesn't. That's interesting to think about. We don't talk about it very much, but Emily doesn't fight me on that. Yumiko looks at me when I talk about this stuff. She says, "Why are you wasting your time talking about disability and death? Of course you're growing. Of course your capabilities are diminishing. You're old, and of course you're going to be dead soon." So I mean, that's Yumiko's matter of fact, frank way. It's like for her, it's like philosophical topics are kind of a waste of time, because the conclusion to which they lead is self-evident, and it usually is from her perspective. It's like she somehow she's somehow cheated and looked at the answers and the answer key at the back of the book somehow. That's one of the things I've been marveled about her. Anyway, so yesterday was more confusion and interesting attempts to have conversation about that, but didn't get very far for the reasons that I said. But I made an extra point with Tatsuya, because if he's going to be around for the long haul, then if he becomes family, then I want to share these things, and I want family to know. I want family to know. So it's worth it. It's not family yet, but you know what I mean. Okay, but what was interesting is the parenthetical note here. It says more confusion, and it says peace-like. I was confused throughout the day yesterday, and like I didn't know where we were going. We go to the. I mean, I'm really. it sounds like I'm really laying it on now, but this is really what it's like. You know, we take my father-in-law out sometimes. We take him to lunch or dinner, and my wife and her sister kind of take charge of that. And for the most part, he's 90 years old. He doesn't know where we're going. He doesn't know what's on the menu. He doesn't know what's happening in the greater circumstance of things. He's still pretty sharp, but he's not cognizant of the bigger world anymore. That's exactly what it's like. And like my father-in-law, who seems to be at peace with this fact, that's what the parenthetical note about peace-like is about. Even though I was confused yesterday. But the big difference is, driving Dad around and doing stuff with him is a little bit different because he gets to ride in the back or gets to ride in the passenger seat. He doesn't have to do the driving and navigating around. He doesn't have to pay the bill. He doesn't have to interact with the wait staff or figure out the parking. So he can just enjoy it being old. I, on the other hand, am still actively involved in all of that stuff, and nevertheless I'm confused. But I'm at peace, which is very interesting. Now this will relate now more to the next line, the next entry here, which is youth and ambition. So Emily arrived, followed by Tatsuya. They're both 24 years old. They're both just starting out in life. And they arrived, and I was overwhelmed yesterday with their energy and ambition. The way that it should be, right? I mean, my energetic, ambitious years are ostensibly older. Sure, I know there's people my age who are going at it just as hard as ever. You know, there's the Warren Buffetts of the world who never quit, right? I'm not one of those guys. I have no interest in being one of them either. Although I may come to regret that. I may come to eat those words one day. You know, if I potentially change. Anyway, that's beside the point. Yesterday, for example, we were walking around because we walk a lot, and Emily and Yumiko were up ahead talking, and Tatsuya and I were behind talking, and I was just exhausted hearing about all of the ideas he has about how to make his mark in the world and how to, become successful in business and in life, and I couldn't keep up. And this is nothing disparaging of Tatsuya. This is just simply saying that he's younger and has more energy and more ambitious than I know how to keep up. I can't even keep up with the listening because it's like I've shifted down. Maybe a year ago I could kind of kept up. He's like a sports car, racing along, and I'm a minivan that's shifted down into, third gear in the slow lane. He's zipping by in the fast lane. You get the idea, right? So I had it was a struggle yesterday to try to keep up with all that, It was hard. And that's not something that needs to be fixed. That's not an observation that okay, why I can ask, how did I respond to that? Did I respond well? I did. I looked at, there wasn't anything to temper. I didn't have any emotions I needed to temper. It wasn't like I was upset or anything like that. I was overwhelmed. I was like, someone who's fishing and throwing line in the water, and every time the dang fly hits the water, another fish on the line. I was reeling them in, right, and trying to keep up. And after a while, it's like, this is too many fish. Great that this lake has so many damn fish in it, but I need a break. That's how it felt. It's not a problem. I wasn't upset at the lake or the fish or Tatsuya for being so young and ambitious. I was simply struggling to keep up. So those are my two notes for yesterday. I managed myself very well yesterday. I did have one thing that kind of tested me a little bit. It happened in the morning before everybody woke up. I managed the finances for us, and I had a financial incident occur yesterday where it doesn't. The details aren't important, but it's going to take a hit on this regular little budget. Just well, basically, it's a charge that I didn't expect, a big charge that I didn't expect. Um, I think I was able to mitigate it. I might be able to stop it. If not, then I'll just have to eat it. And it kind of threw me for a loop in the morning because I run the budget. I had everything set up. It's like, dang it, living on a fixed income, big unexpected charges like that, that were my fault. My fault. I failed to do something, and this is there's no mouth. There's no one is doing anything bad. There's no bad actors here. Totally my fault. But it means I have to, you know, it upsets the budget for the month of August. So I think I can manage it though. So the point is, so this again, this exercise, this video is not for me to tell you that. That's incidental. This is to ask myself, how did I handle that? The fact that when I noticed that charge come through, it was a pending transaction, a very large one. And I said, well, what the hell is that? Well, I knew what it was right away. And I said, how did that happen? So I didn't even have to think it through. I just went right into execution mode, controlling my emotions, using reason to log on to the website, check to see that the state of the subscription, um, realize, whoops, I hadn't turned it off, cancel that subscription, and then contact support to go over my options with regard to what to do. I just took care of it piecemeal. I didn't even have to think about it. That is good. I said before that I'm not interested in the cases where things go average. That's not averaged for that thing to happen, but my response was that response became just natural. That's good. That's a good sign. Okay, let's do the creed. In my book, Going Alone, I have a chapter titled The Good Life, where I try to codify the values that I use to sustain and maintain my life trajectory. And I always like to go over the objectives, the 8 objectives, and then read one principle. As for the objectives, they are 8 as follows: to be always ready to die, to make good and effective use of my time, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, to recognize my true limits and true opportunities, to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully. I think I missed some. Hold on, it feels like about 6. To be always ready to die, to make good and effective use of time, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, to cultivate good emotional reactions, to perform good actions, to recognize true limits and true opportunities, to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly, deliberately, and carefully, and the braid is to keep my balance. I think yesterday, didn't I read the principle of nature yesterday? I think so. Today I'm going to read the principle called the pirate ride, which is my smuggling in to the book my deep suspicion that free will is an illusion. Here we go. The pirate ride, and a quote to begin with. And he's awake who thinks himself asleep. John Keats. There is no good reason to imagine we are anything but atoms and molecules, and compounds and organs, and muscles and limbs, and brain and mind, instantiated through energy borrowed of the sun and the internal heat of the earth in alignment with the inertia of the universe. That one sentence kind of sums it up, to say simply that I don't believe that there's anything magical about us. We are complex chemical reactions subject to the inertia that the universe of matter and energy that was put into effect when the universe seemingly popped into existence at the Big Bang, whatever antecedent was happened there, and that led all the way to now. That everything we do, everything we decide, and all of our seeming willful choices are in alignment with the greater the greater circumstance of where we find ourselves situated and living. In short, free will is an illusion. The demands of biology, wrong one. That is it. In a sense, a very crude sense, we are complex chemical reactions, natural processes unwinding through brief years, months, and days towards some conclusion which a sufficiently powerful computer algorithm might one day plot and predict. We are decision engines driven by the universe at large. In a sense, our destiny was always set. Not that I do believe in predetermination, but I do believe that we are compatible with circumstances in the universe. In a sense, our destiny was always set, with our deliberations and decisions being just some distinct moments of seeming agency along our chemical unwinding from conception to death, a pathway we could hardly avoid or choose otherwise, a route decided not by us, but instead by the complex orchestrations of a universe which delivered us into life and mindlessly conspires during every moment we live to nudge and jostle us into every decision and action we vainly think our own. Not much free will left in that perspective. Life a purposeless river-like meander. We live, we experience, we think, we decide, and we move, but never truly of our own volition, and always on the path of our law-bound chemical unwinding. Life, therefore, is like a Disney theme park pirate ride, an unintentional horror, joy, and amusement in which the robot pirates and the living riders are one. We live our lives then along seemingly invisible tracks we can never jump or escape, for we lack utterly the will to do anything but stay our course. And though we can make any decision we like, we can never have made any decisions other than the ones we did. So with that rather stark suggestion that free will is an illusion, we're left simply unwinding through the biological unfolding of years into whatever life that we're not predestined, but we have no other choice, it seems, to live. When armed with this perspective, especially when we can actually believe it, because it's a tough one to swallow, that really does have a way of mollifying the harsh edges of life. Even the difficult moments becomes more and more possible to live, to adhere to, and to abide the Stoic perspective. Okay, the next item here is to talk about the next 24 hours. Well, we have a busy morning planned at Tatsuya said he wants to go down to the river in the morning. And then at 8:30 we're going to meet Yoko and go to the flea market to do some antiquing. So that's going to be fun. Busy day. So I plan to simply flow with the day. Oh, by the way, the pirate ride. Why do I call it the pirate ride? Well, the reason I call this the pirate ride, the idea of that free will is an illusion, is that I got the idea riding the pirate ride theme park ride at Disneyland, where, if you've been on that ride, you're going through a boat through the lake in the jungle, or it's the Caribbean actually, and there's the animatronic pirates, right? And they're firing guns and getting drunk and chasing women and all that kind of stuff, all they've been set up to do. And it hasn't changed since the 60s when I was a kid. It's still the same. Well, largely, they made it a little more politically correct. It's not chasing women anymore, they're chasing something else. Anyway, and I realized, going back and seeing that, after all those years, the same pirates were doing the same thing all along, that's us. That the decisions and the actions that I make, I'll couch it in my own life, are only those that I could make relative to the universe that's happening around me at large, which I have very little say in or control over. And it influences me at every step in the decisions that I make. When I realized that that was the case, I realized that free will, if it exists at all, is a very slight thing and is really little more than the tipping of the scale at every moment in a particular direction. And even that tipping could be no other way. I can't imagine, like if we lament something happened, that we made a decision and like the outcome. and we say, I wish we'd made some other decision. I would challenge the idea, and this is an untestable challenge, so it's a futile effort. But I would suggest that if you could rerun the clock and go back to that moment, that we could never make a different decision. It would always be the same decision at that particular junction, armed with the same information, Groundhog Day, all over again, forever and ever and ever, if we could do it. That kind of takes some of the bite out of decision making, doesn't it? It doesn't mean that we're liberated of responsibility, but it kind of does. What do we do with that? Let's read comments. Hey Tim, good morning. Hey Tim, I did respond to your message on YouTube, and I did see your message on eBay as well. I just didn't respond. I was so busy yesterday. Thank you for pointing out to me about the tracking information. I expect that it was a typo, that I put the wrong number in, although I did also notice just in as I was setting up some listings this week, that there was the ability that I didn't see before, of specifying the Japan Post as the shipping agency. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe I forgot to include Japan Post as the shipping agency when I set up the listing for the item you purchased. Anyway, thanks for letting me know. I do appreciate that. And I did respond to eBay, on YouTube, but I haven't responded to you yet on eBay. I'll do that today. Tim says, as I get older, especially now, I would hope life's challenges would be easier going by the past. Sometimes it's the opposite. When dealing with my mom passing away, I thought that would be the ultimate challenge. Yet now, 10 years later, some of the most simple challenges can somehow be harder, something I would not expect. Ooh, those are potent and ominous observations, Tim. I haven't really encountered that yet, where the heavy stuff the expected heavy stuff turned out to be not as heavy as expected, and the light stuff heavier still. I haven't encountered that. Thanks, I'm going to keep an eye open. Tim goes on, perhaps aging clouds your judgments in some way. I think that's true. Hi, Michael. Tim says, quick weather check at 9:54 p.m. UK, 16.4 C, 94% humidity. Thankful, rained most of the day. Oh yeah, because you guys said you needed some rain. 16.4 C, we're at 24 C. Or maybe that's, 24 C and 80, I would call that 85 humidity. Red, it's pretty much going into the red in both cases. Temperature's right on red, humidity's strongly in the red, and it feels that way. It feels like just a little more further through the day, it's really gonna get hot. I think cloying might be the word. Maybe that's this Katori Senko smoke is all about. Anyway, Tim, I wanted to point out to you and anyone who might be interested, though, that I noticed that, we passed the summer solstice and the days are getting shorter already. And there's a certain bite that has already left the nighttime. The nighttime has lost that overwhelming, stifling heat. Maybe it's going to come back, but it feels a little nicer. Hi, Robert. Tim says, thanks, Kurt. No worries on the tracking. Thanks for letting me know. I'm unsure if the tracking info stops once it leaves Japan. It should continue all the way, but if I put in the wrong number, that's problematic. And maybe it's the fact that I didn't specify Japan Post that might have had something to do with it too. Although probably not, because I think the tracking number takes you to the Japan, because you said you went to the Japan Post website, so that should have worked. I bet I typed in the number wrong, because it's not a copy and paste thing. It's actually reading it from the printout and then typing it in, and I mix that kind of stuff up all the time. All right, well, it's been a good half-hour talk. I hope everybody has a great day. Emily's and Tatsuya are here. We're going to go do some antiquing, like I said, and maybe go down to the river, etc., etc. Tim says, longest day here is June 21st, and notice it's getting slightly darker earlier now. Yep, and it's staying darker longer in the morning. Wish you all the best, everybody. Be safe, but not too safe. Take care.